Morning, Madam Chair and committee members. My name is Rob Lodge. I'm the Executive Director of the Bond Review Board. And as you may be aware, we have three main charges. The first charge is to review and approve state debt before it goes to market. So when we have somebody like TxDOT, the Veterans Land Board, the Department of Housing and Community Affairs, our board, which consists of the governor, controller, speaker, and LightGov, would essentially approve that debt before it is sold. Secondly, we act as curators for local government debt information. So whenever you see any local government debt information that is compared among other entities, we, in our process, when that debt is issued and the information goes to the Attorney General's office, we take those debt service schedules and we orient them to the state's fiscal year so you can compare across all of those entities. And thirdly, as KJ alluded to, we administer the private activity bond program for the state. While our appropriations for 24 and 25 were roughly $1.3 million a year each, KJ did bring up that we do, through the private activity bond program, bring in over $2 million per year. Now, we did have a couple of small fiscal requests or exceptional items. We built an SQL database for debt, and it was built in 2015. We currently use an Access GUI, and that Access GUI is getting to the point of limitation, so we're looking at potentially moving to a web application that'll be a little more responsive and useful by staff. Additionally, is a number of agencies, there's a refresh we'd like to do on our website, and you can see the numbers there. They aren't substantial, but for us, we believe they're important. Additionally, we are very proud of the alumni of the Bond Review Board. They've gone on to do great things. You have the person in charge of debt at the Veterans Land Board. You have the person in charge of debt at the UT system, the former treasurer at AISD, a number of other positions where folks have gone on to do good things managing debt. But we would like to also make the Bond Review Board a place where you can continue your career. And so item 3 is a position where a point where we're asking for a little bit more there. And in the fourth item, we are also looking at QShips and EMMA subscriptions. Those are a little expensive, and we would like to essentially get those numbers where we're not running afoul of the entity, and we can potentially have all that information there for you. We do have a few graphs, and I kind of want to go over a couple things. KJ did mention the total state debt outstanding over $73 million, but one thing I think is important to note, that includes conduit issuers, and for instance, if the Department of Housing and Community Affairs issues a multifamily housing REFO bond, or if there is a corporation that is issuing a toll road revenue bond that is not part of Texas, we have these entities that essentially act as pass-throughs for those obligations. So when you look at debt that is really, I'd say this is state of Texas debt, we're looking at just under $60 million, 59.58 billion, excuse me. I have a number of charts and graphs here, and I'm very happy to answer any questions that you may have about them, and I'll let this conclude my testimony.
Thank you for your testimony. Members, any questions?
I did.
Representative Barbara Griffin-Hawkins.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Talk to us about the type of collateral we have for our bonds. Is it mainly bricks and mortar projects?
I would say, first and foremost, when you have a general obligation bond, the full faith and credit of the state is pledged. So first money is not dedicated otherwise in the Treasury go to back those repayments. And one thing I definitely want to point out, and KJ mentioned, we are AAA rated. We are rated more highly than the United States government, which can, for all intents and purposes, print their own money. But that being said, first things would be the dollars coming out of the state treasuries if it was a general obligation of the state.
Do we have a default rate on bonds at all?
There are no defaults in the state bonds. Texas state bonds, no ma'am.
Okay. So we have an excellent bond rating.
Right. One thing I do want to point out, there has, for a conduit issuer, and this is where I would like to separate, I believe maybe 10 years ago, there may have been a default through the Texas State Affordable Housing Corporation. But David Long would probably be the better person to ask that question. But that, once again, was TSHAC acting as a pass-through, and there was a borrower behind that was the one who was on the hook for those bonds.
And so are y'all doing any charter school bonds?
We don't. If it's is approved at the local level, we do try to collect that information. It is a little gray as far as conduits at the local level. If we are supposed to be getting that, it'd be great if it was cleared through legislation. But if TPFA, the Texas Public Finance Authority, they have a charter school finance corporation that is one of the issuers that we would approve. So if the Texas Public Finance Authority were to use the Texas Charter Public School Corporation to issue, then that would have to come before our board.
Well, and the reason I raised that question is that when charter schools are closed,
Yeah.
okay, is that debt hanging out there, okay, and we as a state have infrastructure in place to possibly sell the property or anything like that. What is our risks involved in that?
Those would not be state entities.
Okay.
So we have no, essentially it'd be a private
third-party bonding entity.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
And we've seen similar situations where you might have a conduit issuer that has a borrower behind it that should be the true backstop of that. And so that's what I know this is maybe a difficult concept to grasp at times, is when you have these varying layers of issuers and honestly, if you're looking at some of the conduit debt, some of these transportation corporations, I wouldn't be surprised if the state decided, well, this is something we may want to go out and outright purchase, which happened not too long ago in the Houston area. But that is, for our perspective, when we are the ones doing the accounting for the state debt numbers that go into the official statements and go into a lot of the reports that you may see, we separate based on who is legally liable for that obligation.
So really, our role is more than an administrative role.
For
An oversight.
For which part?
As we look at our bonding situation.
Well, we approve, and we for state debt, like if TxDOT, if Veterans Land Board, anybody, especially with the general obligation pledge, we take that extremely seriously. I mean, that is, that is our full faith and credit. Our board reviews that, and if it is we use terms, for instance, like the Veterans Land Board. A lot of times they will issue debt and they'll have the full faith and credit of the state, but what will go back to pay essentially the what is owed on those debts will be the loans that they make to veterans who may be buying homes. So the mortgage pays, will effectively pay down the bonds. So that there's that, and that's another entity that is cash flows extremely well, where they are able to cover any obligation, and never in the history of the program had a default.
Well, awesome. Thank you.
Of course. Thank you, ma'am.
Members, any other questions? Thank you for all the work that you do, and thank you to the agencies and the entire team and for your modest budget asks.
Thank you, ma'am.
The chair calls KJ Curtis, analyst with the Legislative Budget Board.